talk a little bit about my journey here to America. I arrived in 1984 with my family to New York City from Afghanistan after the Soviet invasion. To be truthful, the Soviet invasion was many years before that, but my dad was like, oh, it's not gonna last. This is gonna be fine. It's gonna be like a blip in our history, it'll be over, until it wasn't. And then we came here under political asylum. And when we came to New York City, my dad said to us, don't take your shoes off. This is gonna be like 2 seconds, it'll be over, we're not here to stay. Essentially, this is not your home. Don't get used to this. And this message was relayed to us in lots of different ways, and he was very serious about this. This is not our home. This is not where we are to assimilate. We are not Americans. And he would do this in little ways. He would like reinforce this message in little ways throughout my childhood. For example, I wasn't able to say I'm going to my school, or there's this event at my school. My dad would correct me and say, no, there's this event at the school. Or I have to return my library books. No, you have to return the library books. These are not our things. This is not our home. Our home is Afghanistan, which felt true to me and rung true to me and was easy to adhere to, I think, for the first year, then the second year, then the third. But then after a while, when I spent more time in America than I had in Afghanistan, it became less and less true. And I think for my parents at that point, my brother, sister, and I were morphing more and more into people they couldn't relate to anymore. These are not the children they had always seen in Afghanistan, or the generations of children that came before. We were some weird hybrid that they were desperately trying to cling to. So one of the ways that my parents decided that they could do this was through religion. And this is particularly funny in their case because they had never uttered a word about God or anything before. In fact, my dad was notoriously non-religious, but he thought Islam. That's how we can create some uniformity here, as we were listening to Madonna and stuff. So that's what he did, and he was very, he's very gentle yet consistent with his message that we are not of them. We are this other group of people. And this all worked out great until adolescence. And in adolescence, 2 messages came very clear to me. One, that despite where I grew up, despite any messages that I would get anywhere else, I was expected to have an arranged marriage. That is what Afghani girls do to an Afghani man. And I didn't know anybody that I wasn't already related to. I'm talking first cousin related to. So that was not an option for me as far as I was concerned. And 2, second thing was that as I was growing, my body as a woman was considered shameful in a way. And this is a very cultural thing. I was very policed as a young girl as well. For example, the concept of what would people say, like the other performance said, was very much part of my life. The concept of virginity was drilled into us pretty much from the age of 10 on. That was the most important thing you could possibly achieve. And of course, I'm also listening to hip hop. I'm really into punk rock at this stage. I want to dye my hair purple. It's a daily fight with my mom. And all I want to do is rebel in these small ways. I feel like it's my job in life to rebel. So these messages didn't exactly sit well with me. And I became really hardcore into feminism, but the kind of feminist that really needs to let everyone around her know all the time. And my dad took this in stride. He took this really well. He was so gentle about it. He would try to tell me stories of people who had arranged marriages, the people that I knew, and that their marriages were going really well. So, for example, he'd say, your cousin Abdullah, he just got married to this girl. They're so happy. And then he would look at me and be like, you want to ruin this with your feminism? And you can deny that those guys are happy. But but I did. I always ruined things with my feminism in that family. And it got worse as I grew up. But I found ways to rebel that were private, that weren't necessarily out in public as much. And one of those ways was through poetry and through writing. And I would write these poems about how I felt and about sexuality and the tensions between being an American teenager and being really into boys and being a Muslim girl at home. And this hybrid of Islam that my parents decided felt right for them. And so I would write poems, and I would publish them slowly, first in a journal that I would keep at school so no one at home would ever see. Then slowly in a journal at home, and then published in a school journal that no one would ever actually see unless I pointed them to it. And then eventually I submitted a poem to an anthology. And I'd like to read that poem to you that I wrote when I was very young. It's called Astaghfirullah, or God forbid. With you I change pronouns and de-sex my words. Tongue rattles, words come strained, even my nerves protest the changing of love, lust, relationship, into friend, friendship, like. Because with you, Aunt, Ama, Wadad, I can't imagine living honesty and virtue at the same time. These things are not things in an Afghan girl's hands. These words are sins in an Afghan girl's mouth. We listen crazy happy to American music, your index finger thumping fast on the steering wheel. You spin me right round, baby. Sing, sister, sing. But love and seduction are feelings foreign to a heart purified in wudu. Thank God we are too pure and clean for anything but approved arrangements. My skirt rebels above my knees, and I am reminded with a harsh slap to my thigh that my chastity is your honor. My chastity is your honor. There is, it seems, so much power in the thin piece of skin between my legs. That little bit of woman scares, inspires whole laws and customs. Our thinnest, smallest flesh demands such attention. Imagine the demands of my whole body. Imagine what our whole people can do. So that was my poem. And so, I mean, it's kind of blasphemous, right? I'm talking about my vagina in a published book. And it's not just I'm talking about my vagina, but I'm talking about my vagina, and you can Google it. And my name is now out there in the world, and not my mother can Google it. So this secret rebellion that I'd been kind of like stewing all my adolescence suddenly came, just was out there on Google. And I thought, well, I have to tell my parents. I have to tell my mom, at least, right? She's the lesser of the two. And so I was really scared she'd be so upset. It would be such a letdown, because not only am I broadcasting dirty laundry, and in our family's words it would be dirty laundry, but I'm also talking about something so intimate that I actually don't even have a word for it in my language. Vaginas. Last time I'll say that. So I went to my mom and I showed it to her and I said, so I did this thing. And she looked at it and I'm bracing, and it was a time when my stomach was just in knots. I was so afraid of the letdown that was gonna be coming. And she looked up and she was like, my daughter published. And that's all she cared about. Bragging rights trumps culture. Thank you.